Being a firstborn daughter is never easy. It's like an unpaid internship for a management position you never applied for. I used to think this was purely Nigerian till I started seeing memes and videos that related to this all over Instagram. It shocked me. When you are in this position, you are the deputy parent, the shock absorber, and one who has to be strong so everybody else can be soft. You cannot make any mistakes. Today, we're unpacking the firstborn daughter's burden with my dear friend Onyi, who joined in the episode to What Do I Owe This? We are talking about the guilt of moving away, the pressure of being the example, and the day the burden changed forever when I lost my dad. It's a raw conversation about the role we didn't choose but spent our lives perfecting. You can call this the Ajabo version of the firstborn daughter's burden. This will be a very raw conversation, so hang on tight. I'm Kosi Ekichiku, and welcome to All the Little Things. Society loves a strong woman. We especially love a firstborn daughter who handles it all without a hair out of place. We give her awards, call her a pillar, and lean on her until she forgets how it feels to stand up just for herself. Circling back to another episode with my friend Onyi, we will be looking at how the roles or our roles as the firstborn daughters have shaped us. For the past several years, I have played that role to perfection. But like our last episode together, she's one of the few people who has been backstage for my live show. Please welcome back Onyi. Yay! Hoo.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Kosi, for having me here again. I think it's nice to be here.
Glad to have you back. Glad to have you back. I'm so happy you've joined me again for this episode. Why do I feel like this episode will be more chaotic than our first episode?
Let's see what happens.
So, yeah, how have you been? How has everything been with you? You celebrated your birthday recently. How was that like for you?
Well, I've been pretty good. Yes, my birthday was on the 9th of April, and it was okay. It was okay, really. It was okay. Mostly a chill day. Just had cake, was indoors. Had some friends that stay around just come over and played games, ate, and we're happy, and then went home eventually. So that was just what happened. Nothing much. Even though I had to work on that day, but
Yeah. That must have been fun for you. I'm very, very happy you had a fun time.
Yeah. I'm happy I did as well.
Yeah. So anyway, today we'll be taking the topic or the conversation of the firstborn daughter, right?
Yeah.
It's such an interesting topic because I'm a firstborn daughter and you're a firstborn daughter. Yes? Okay.
Yes, I am.
And so I think it's really, really poignant to discuss this with you because I feel like a lot of times we're often should I call it neglected, or we don't really get the kind of, what do you call it, the kind of love, right, that we're supposed to get. So I want us to dissect this topic as much as we can. So okay,
Okay.
so first of all, I want us to talk about, the first segment will be about, I've titled it a student as a parent, right? So what, when we were
I
a
didn't get that.
student as a parent, a
Okay.
student as a parent. Yeah. I want to seek your perspective on our university days, right? In respect to us being firstborn daughters. How was it like for you? Like, not just as a student, but like as a firstborn daughter, being a student, being the first, probably the first in your family to go to, like the first in your immediate family to probably go to the university. How was that pressure like for you?
That's the question. Well, I don't even know that there was pressure like that because I don't know. I feel like I've always just been. I don't know how to describe it. But then this child that growing up, I was the one who, okay, you use a textbook and it's very very neat and nice, and then your siblings
Yeah.
can use it. When you're done. Then when people
Mm-hmm.
didn't used to write in textbooks and all that. So like
Mm-hmm.
should I just say I was a very unproblematic first child. I always knew, that I was the firstborn and then I had to take care of my siblings and,
Yeah.
perhaps they looked up to me or whatever. But it wasn't, my parents were there, right? Almost always they worked day jobs.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as if they used to travel all the time and I had to, take care of my siblings. But then, yes, there were times when they were at home and I had to take care of them. But I think the only thing was, there wasn't a lot of pressure on me, right? But then I just knew that I had to do well. I had to get good grades. I had to,
Yeah.
if I've been sent to school, obviously I had to do what I'd been sent to school for because I
Yeah.
had younger ones who were looking up to me. It was whatever pressure was just from me, like for me to from myself rather, to just be an upstanding citizen or to just be a good person, right? Because I knew that I had people looking up to me. So I think that was
Yeah.
that was mostly it for me.
Okay. Okay, that's good. But I wanted to ask you from the perspective
Yeah.
of, like, I know maybe you probably had a very good childhood, but I was asking you from the perspective of more like, even though you must have had the provisions, right? You had the textbooks, there must have still been a time where you must have felt, or rather, let me phrase it like this: was there a time where you felt like maybe some of the responsibilities was more on you than it was on your siblings as a firstborn daughter?
Well, perhaps it was just something that I became used to. I mean, I always knew that, when my parents were not home, I was the one
Yeah.
who was, should I say, in charge, right? I would be the one in charge. I'm the one who is going to be responsible. If something had gone wrong in the house, they're coming
They
to
will
ask
ask
me.
you.
They're coming to ask me, right? So, and then you have to know what it is that had happened. And so I think that that was mostly it, right? Just knowing that, okay, when I'm the one who's meant or who is supposed to take care of my siblings, my parents are not there. I'm the one who is supposed to be able to talk to them when they are in the wrong. Just that was essentially like the role of a mini parent, but
Yeah.
after that was essentially, yeah.
I like the fact you use the word mini parent, because that is literally what they've turned us to, isn't it? Because and that's why I was asking you from the perspective of school, because it's something you
Yeah.
learn from home already as a child, and then you kind of bring that with you when you're in the school environment as well. So what was that expectation carried through when you were in school? Like, oh, my parents expect this of me, I have to do well, like you mentioned, right? This is what they expect, I don't have to. Because then I think that there is a cautious, or rather in their subconscious as parents, they feel like we are setting a kind of trendsetters, right? Or trailblazers. So whatever we do as firstborns kind of trickles down to our siblings, our younger ones, right? So that's where I'm coming from. Like, how was that pressure like for you? Did you feel overwhelmed by it? Did you feel like, or was it non-existent to you?
I get the question that you're asking. For me,
Yeah.
like I said, I was always a child that, should I say, a good child, right? Used the books nicely, had good grades in school. I was prefect in secondary school, so like it was
Yeah.
just natural for me to carry that into the university. So nobody
Yeah.
had to say, "Oh, you have to do very well because your siblings are looking up to you," because I was already doing very well, like academically, right? I was already, the person that had her head down, that knew to read her books, like, so it wasn't, nobody had to tell me anything. Perhaps after just the advice, "Oh, be a good girl, you're going to university," that kind of thing, when you're leaving home. But there was no pressure to say, "Oh, that you're doing this, but then your siblings are looking at you and you shouldn't be doing that." It was just, for me, it was just a smooth. I never had that pressure to
Yeah.
do better or to do right because I was the firstborn. Because I'm like, it just came
Mhm.
naturally to me. Perhaps it just came naturally to me, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's it.
Yeah.
So how about you? Was it the same for you, or there was pressure?
It was kind of the same for me in a way, right?
Yeah.
But I think it had a little twist, and I think the twist was the fact that, you know, because of my family dynamic, you know what I'm talking about, right? In terms of my dad, and my dad
Mhm.
was sick for a while, so that dynamic added to the responsibility, right? It was like, oh, just kind of, even though we know you are a hardworking person, you're academically sound, you're morally correct, but you still have to remember, if it makes sense. And so for me, it was, I would not really say it was too pressure filled, but there was some pressure attached to it, right? Because it felt like you're the one who is supposed to make your statement, because you cannot go wrong with this, if it kind of makes sense. You can't go wrong with it because this is how it is at the moment, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
so for me, it was more of like that kind of pressure. Like the pressure was there, but it wasn't much, if it makes sense. It was more of like, we understand that you are a good daughter, right? But there are still expectations, if it makes sense, right? But it wasn't coming from like, "Oh, you must get things done in this specific way, or you must get things done in that specific way," if it makes sense. Like, we're just like, remember where you come from, like, and that was it. I tried my best to be better, if it makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
But I also wanted to ask, do you feel like, that being said, do you feel like maybe we missed out on being young because we were too busy with, you know, being firstborn? But I always think about that. Do you ever think about that?
Hmm. Um. I don't know. I don't actually. I've never thought about it, but now that I think about it, I don't think that if I missed out on perhaps having phone, right, or anything, it was probably just it had nothing to do with being a firstborn. Perhaps just my temperament, the kind of person that I am. Like I'm an introvert, right? Mostly indoors,
Oh,
doing not
the same club, me and you both.
so, not doing much, not taking certain kind of stupid risks, like going for parties at night in school when I had the opportunity to. But, if any of that happened, if I did not explore, it was not, it had nothing to do with being a firstborn daughter or whatever. It was just me and my sense of self-preservation, So
Yeah.
I think that's just what I would say.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. But for me, now that we're actually talking about it, I think we had almost very similar kind of growth patterns, but in
Yeah.
a slightly different way. Because for me, even though I had that self-preservation, right, I was still the kind of person that would like to do things myself. But not like partying, for instance, because I was the kind of person that I've always been an adventurous person, right? And so for me, doing things like, maybe climbing a tree, for instance, was something I would do when I was a kid. For instance, I did that a lot. I'm so sorry. And you're the first one, like, I don't know, I don't care, I will like, leave me alone. Just leave me alone, right, to express myself. I think that sometimes, and this is where it's coming from, right? I think that sometimes when you're a first daughter in a lot of households, I'm not saying it's for every household because everybody's different, right?
But I think that society expects you to kind of deem yourself, like where they're like, oh, why Igbo now? Like in our culture, you're in the Igbo culture, why Igbo? Like there are some certain things you shouldn't do, quote and unquote. I did feel it when I was in school because it also played out even in the way we would take lectures, for instance, or the way I would show up for maybe people, maybe even my roommates, right? It played out. Like I gave an example. I think when we did the first episode, I said that my roommate 200 level, the one in linguistics, which you know, it kind of played out too in that kind of dynamic. Because instead of focusing on I would know I know most people would be like, oh, it's just a normal kind thing to do for another human being, right? But I think when I look back now, a lot of that was also because of the way I was trained to process things, right? And so it kind of played out subconsciously in the way I handled things with her, like, oh, taking care of her when she was in the hospital, trying to give birth, going back and forth from the hostel back to the hospital and stuff like that. I think a lot of times we are built that way in terms of personality, right? To see things very differently because, and that's why what, like you said at the beginning, like we are like mini parents, and it's true, right? I totally agree with that. We are sort of mini parents because that is the only way you can figure or something like that, and it should make sense. And I think it played out no matter how you want to look at it. At least from my own experience, it played out. And I also have other experiences back in school where you could say, oh, this thing, you were able to look at it very differently from, say, someone that is like the last one. Even within the home, within me and my sister, for instance, the way I would look at things is very different from the way she would look at things. She's very, very free-spirited in a way, while I have to be much more conservative or preserved, right, in the way I access things or look at things. And sometimes it's not even because I want to do things that way. Sometimes it's just because of the way I kind of like I have been brought up, if it kind of makes sense. So yeah. And I think that sometimes even at work, right, when you try to do that, some people will just be like, let's slow down. Like, just like, oh my god, wait, I have to hold the brakes here because I'm showing myself. And I think it's such a societal thing because when I also look at, for instance, when I look at my younger cousins that are being born or that were born a couple of years ago, I also see the same pattern in them, right? So it's a societal thing where you can see it like they are the firstborn daughters and you can already see them being micromanaged, right? I think it's a micromanagement in some sort of way, right? Because we don't even feel it until you're old enough to kind of process, wait, what happened to me throughout my life? And you understand what I mean, right? So, okay, moving on to the next segment. I also wanted us to discuss us as firstborn daughters being the potential versus the pillars, right? What I mean by that is like we've talked a lot about our dreams, right? Even in our previous episode, right? Talked a lot about our dreams. Do you think that being a firstborn daughter made you dream smaller or safer? Because I knew that my people were like knowing that people were dependent on you, that kind of thing, or like people were looking up to you, did it make you feel like, oh, you needed to restrict some of your big dreams or your ambitiousness or your adventurous nature, that kind of thing? Yeah.
Okay, that's a very interesting one. I don't think being a firstborn daughter made me, kind of not dream a lot. First of all, I'm not a very adventurous person, right? I think that has more to do with my temperament than being a first daughter, right? But I'd say I was ambitious to the degree that I could be. From secondary school, I wanted to read medicine, but obviously that didn't work out because Jam had other plans, and then I got yeah. So yes, I don't know. I've just always to the degree of my exposure, what I knew, I think I've always been ambitious. When I see something and I feel like I can do this, I want to do this, set my mind to it, I just work hard to make sure that I do it. And I'm not thinking, because okay, first of all, I'm not from a rich family, but we're okay. So I'm not thinking, oh, my siblings are dependent on me to pay their school fees, or that I cannot afford to keep going to school because somebody needs their fees to be paid. I need to work, and all of that. So for me, I wouldn't say being a firstborn has affected me in that way, right? I've been able to dream as much as I want to dream, and pursue the ambitions that I actually the things that I have in mind. I've set my mind to do. So I think I've it's been the opposite for me.
Okay, that's interesting. But I think it's also, I think that, at least from what I've heard, because I do communicate with a lot of people, right? And I don't know how it works out, but most of my friends are actually firstborn daughters. I don't know how it works out, but I think that one thing I have learned across the board is that sometimes a lot of ladies, I'm talking of people that were not necessarily from the best of homes. Maybe they were from really, I'll not say really poor backgrounds, but they were not okay in terms of finances, right? One of them, so I think that's where a lot of them fall into, right? Because they're like, when I was in like a home, even though I had this kind of big dreams, right, I had to dream in a safer way. I couldn't take risk, if it makes any sense, because taking risks would mean that I would miss a step, for instance, and missing a step will cost my family 5 years or 10 years to recover, if it makes sense. So they would be restricted in their access, or in terms of like creativity, for instance, or trying to develop much more of a nuanced way of viewing life, or much more of an ambitious nature, if it makes sense. But I think for me, it's quite different, right? Like you said, our parents were not the richest, but they were comfortable, right? In some ways, right? And I think that kind of plays out in the way, because we are able to, when you're comfortable, it's just like somebody like the Otedolas or the Dangotes, for instance, right? When you're comfortable, you're able to think much more freely. You don't really have that burden on you, right? As opposed to people that are coming from homes that are not really the best when it comes to finances, right? So I think that is also the factor of their familial backgrounds or financial backgrounds within their families also plays a very big role on how they see these responsibilities. I know people that dropped out of school that were firstborn daughters just to make sure that their siblings continued, right? And it's a very bad story, but it was their reality at the end of the day, right? Because they had to sacrifice something to be able to to move their entire families forward, if it makes sense. And I think that is, it becomes a little bit toxic and draining for you as a person, right? Because you're not able to achieve all the things you want to achieve. So that's where I come from, right, with my point of that safer place or that smaller place, right? Because it just shrinks your ambition to a very minuscule kind of place.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
I get the point you're trying to make.
I also, as much as I don't think that's an ideal situation for anybody, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, to be able to shrink yourself or be able to take on jobs that are not what you'd like, just so that you can see your siblings through school, or just make sure that they have a better life than you had. It's not it's not something that I'd wish on anybody. I also think, that it's a sacrifice, and it depends on how your siblings eventually turn out and how they view the sacrifices that you've laid for them. Some siblings become ungrateful, when they get ahead and they don't realize that this person actually actually laid down their ambitions and laid down all their dreams just to ensure that I get to where I am. And then sometimes you have siblings who understand, who are grateful to you and who would literally do anything for you eventually when they become somebody. So I feel like there are two ways that that this could actually play out, right? And those who fall on the positive side, obviously they may not regret regret it. But when you have siblings who don't understand the sacrifice that you made for them, that's when, you begin to regret it, at the end of the day.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we see it happening all the time in the Nigerian landscape, right? Where a firstborn, maybe it's a firstborn son or a firstborn daughter, does all this work, right? They put their family first, and at the end of the day, when it's time for these people to kind of support them or to pour that same love on them, they are nowhere to be found. And I think it's really, really a very toxic way of looking at things, and it's so draining because this person has sacrificed a lot for you and there's nothing in return. So I think, and that's the funny thing, because society expects you to take it even when you complain about it, right? They're like, oh no, you're the firstborn, it's normal. And I'm just like, what do you mean? You know what I mean? Like, what are you talking? It's strange. It's really strange to me. But yeah, it's the reality, and that's why I said, in the context of a firstborn daughter, it's a very societal thing how the goalposts are moved, right? So anyway, which brings me to this next segment, talking about how grief. I have spoken about it extensively, right? Brings me to how grief really played a role in my position of birth, right? I remember when my dad was being buried, right? And people were like, "Oh no, don't cry. You're the first." And I was like, "What I don't."
You have to be strong for everybody.
Okay, what about me? I don't understand. Like, am I not like a human being? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a very toxic it's a very toxic way of viewing things. But it's the societal way of doing things, right? Everybody thinks, oh, you should tough it up, right? And when you try to complain that, oh, you're passing through this, right? They're like, oh, look at this person's daughter now. Is she also a firstborn? That kind of thing. Like, oh, she's like, it's this kind of like, what do I call it? This kind of like suffering culture that we've kind of like, it's not really suffering, I will call it. What was the pain, or rather pain culture? Is it pain I should tell me to ask? Where everybody feels like it's normal.
Just enduring and not showing emotions.
You know what I mean? Like when you're passing through breakdown, or when you're passing through depression, or when you're passing through anxiety, or whatever it is you're passing through, they'll just be like, just pray about it, everything will be fine. What? How? What do you mean? What do you mean pray about it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying prayer isn't good, it is, but sometimes I think there needs to be a serious conversation as to how the society kind of views firstborn, whether you're a guy or whether you're a lady, but especially a lady, there should be a change in how they expect you to carry on enduring things that should not even be endured. You should just drop off these emotions somewhere and just breathe, right? But they put it on you to kind of like figure it out, right? I think it's such
I guess.
Mm-hmm. I just think it's such.
I get what you're trying to say, right? And like you pointed out, it's a societal thing. I don't know where it came from. I don't know how it got here, but a lot of people, perhaps as a result of not knowing how to console somebody or what to say, they just say what it is that they've heard over and over again. And it's a thing that we need to unlearn as a people. It's okay to show emotions, right? Mm-hmm. It's okay to cry when you've lost somebody. So it's something that I just think all of this is something that we can perhaps fix as we go, to ensure that with your own children that you're going to have, you make sure that you're not repeating the same thing to them when they're perhaps crying, just let them know it's okay to show their emotions, right? Obviously. So I just feel like it's something we need to unlearn, and we need to do better, so that eventually we'll probably get to have a society where, people are much more understanding of, the different ranges of emotions and how it's okay to show it,
Yeah, but that's another thing I want to say, right? Because I think that now that we've established that it's more of a societal thing, I think that sometimes they even think that we as firstborn daughters we should not even show it. We should not show any emotions, which is crazy because, like, why? I'm a human, like, so because of the position, because I came out first, does not mean I should. There's a lot of pressure, right? It's a lot of pressure on you to be much more forward. There's a lot of pressure on you to make ends meet. There's a lot of pressure on you to be better than most people, right? They just put this unnecessary pressure that, in my opinion, I think is so unnecessary, because it creates more harm than good psychologically, right? But what it does is that it just isolates you. It keeps you in this void where you're not even, the only thing you're that is instilled in you is, oh, you have responsibilities. You know what I mean? Like, so these responsibilities should play out like this. You know, like it's just it's really difficult. You know, if you want to put it in a bigger context, it's such a difficult place to be in. And I don't even wish that on anybody. But like, yeah, I just hope that is something that we can work towards in the future as people that want to be parents one day. I just hope that is something that we will be able to unlearn and then
do better.
Yeah, a different variant of that entirely. So yeah, that's just what I want to say. Yeah. So I actually wanted to ask, in terms of, because now my last episode that will air will be about peace, right? So, but I want to ask, like, as firstborn daughters, right? What is that thing that you do that usually brings you peace of mind? Because for me, it took me, it took me like unlearning a lot of things. It took me going through a lot in my life to really learn or relearn peace. Like we talked about previously, like we need to be able to unlearn some certain things that maybe were passed down from generation to generation, right? And learn new things, right? So, but for me, what do you think peace is as a firstborn daughter, and how can you add that to your life, if it makes sense? Yeah.
Okay. So what do I think peace means? I'd say peace is a state of calmness, right? A state of just being where you're not allowing external pressure to get to you, right? So, and that's how
Nigerian other people will not allow you to not have external pressure. It's not.
that's how I describe peace. Honestly, I've always considered myself a very I don't even know what the word is, but I've always not allowed external pressure get to me for any reason. I have a mind of my own, right? I like to be, I'm always logical to a large extent, right? There are times when I do logical things, right? But then to a large extent, I'm always a very logical person. I think things through. When you're saying, okay, this has to be done this way, I'm asking perhaps I will not even ask you. I'll ask myself why. Why does this need to be done this way? And if I'm not able to provide a rational answer to it, I'm not even going to allow whatever it is that you think that's going on in your head to affect me. So, there's pressure most times, firstborn daughters, you have to do this at this age, perhaps get married at a certain age, do this one at that age. But all of that never gets to me because, like I said, I understand action and consequences. Right? There's an action and consequences to a large extent. If anybody's pushing you to probably get married and have children, and when you're not ready for them, you're the one who's going to bear the consequences of raising children you're not ready to bear.
That's a different segment on its own, because I have to say.
Yeah. So you're the one who's going to bear the consequences of having children and, being married when you're not ready for those. So I've always understood actions and consequences. So I've tried a lot, to ensure that I'm nothing external pressure doesn't get to me, to a large extent, right? And I think also it has to do with the kind of family I'm from. My parents are not people that will pressure you to do anything. I've had some of my friends, say one of my friends used to tell me how when we're done with school, her mom would come talk to her always, when are you getting married, wake up at night to have these conversations. And I'm like what? So like those kind of pressures, those kind of pressure from they're not things I understand. I don't think my parents ever did
my mom would ask once in a while, oh, what's going on, this and that, and I'll tell you what's going on, but there was no, you have to get married, this one, that one, nobody is, well, like I said, I'm probably just lucky, that I have the kind of parents that I have, right? So that's also perhaps one reason why I say pressure doesn't get to me, because it's just people from outside, and you don't care, you don't matter in the grand scheme of things, right? If I'm being honest, pressure from you is not going to get to me. And so I think that's essentially it. Things I do, I like listening to music and perhaps a podcast. I listen to podcasts as well. I read. Yeah, I like to read. I see movies, right? So just very introverted kind of things. But so I hope I was able to answer your question.
Yeah, you did. It was actually a very good answer, actually. And it's also the kind of thing I like to do. But I think that sometimes for me, like I said, because we're two different people, right? And even though I feel like we had almost very similar dynamics growing up, we are still two different individuals. And so the way I was able to see peace growing up was a little bit different, right? My parents were very forward thinking, or let me not say where. My mom is still alive, right? Thank God. But my dad was very forward thinking. My mom is 100% very forward thinking as well. But I think that the way I was also able to define peace, like I said, there was a little bit of a twist in my own story, in my own family, because of my dad's illness. And I think that also translated to how I saw peace in general for a very long time, until, my dad, died, and I was able to see it very, very differently, right? So where I was able to relearn what peace was essentially from scratch, right? And I think that for me, I started to, it wasn't until this last couple of years, let me say 4 or 5 years now, I would say, okay, this is what peace in my own terms means, right?
Oh yeah.
It's not that I didn't have it before, but it was a much more diluted, maybe kind of translucent or opaque version of it, because I would see it from the lens of my family, not my own personal experiences, if it kind of makes sense, right? So, but it wasn't until the past couple of years that I was able to see it from my own lens and be my eyes are open to what this emotion really is at this moment in time. And I think that for me, I was also able to have boundaries, say no a lot to a lot of things, including family. And they'll be like, no, you're the firstborn. How dare you say no? I had a lot of scuffle with people. Oh, God. I had a lot of scuffle with people, because they'll be like, oh no, how are you saying no to this thing? And I'll be like, no, it's as far as if it's going to cost me my peace of mind, I do not care. I don't even care if you're the related to me through 3 grandfathers ago. I don't even care. I will prioritize myself. You know what I mean? And I think that sometimes that's why I think that the society plays a huge role in not giving us that peace that we deserve, right? Because these same family members, you've tried to gain your peace, right? And then you have some people that are extended or maybe even direct family members that will now try to remove, or they'll try to test your boundaries, right? Which is where what you said, which is why I like what you said, right? In terms of having your own mind and not being influenced easily by external pressure, right? Because even if you do have that mind, in some dynamics or in some families, right, they will still want to test you. My God, they will do so. I don't know why it's like that. It's such a toxic culture, right? Honestly.
I get what you're saying, and one thing I also want to add is that I've learned to give people grace a lot, because I realize that a lot of people do things because they don't know better. Right? Exactly. They don't know better. That's why they do what they do. So it's difficult for me to get angry with somebody who's trying to pressure me into doing something, because perhaps you do not know better. But the only place I'm going to fault myself is when I let what you're saying get to me. That's the only place. That's where I'm going to fault myself. But if it's for understanding that you don't know better, that's why you're doing what you're doing. Yes, I'm a very understanding person. I'll make excuses for you. But what you're saying is not going to get to me, because I know what it is that I want to do in my life, and I know that this thing you're asking me to do, it doesn't make sense for me. You're not me. You don't understand my struggles. You don't understand what I'm going through. You don't understand anything about me. You're just asking me to do things based off of your view of life, which may not always be my own view of life as well. So I really don't even let those things get to me most times.
Yeah, I understand it. I think it's 100% valid, right? But I also think that when you do try to choose yourself and fight against that
Yeah.
external pressure, they will label you. Oh my goodness. That's another part, right?
Of
Oh
course,
Lord.
you have to get ready to be labeled. That's it. Whatever it is, like
They
I
will
said,
label.
there's action and there's consequences. You have to know the consequence for deciding to not listen to people. They will say what they want to say.
God of mercy. They will label. They will be like, this girl is difficult. You can know what
Yeah.
and you go, what is your problem? Why are you this difficult? And I'm just like,
Yeah.
all of this because I said no. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah, I
don't
get
understand.
it.
Like, recently, right? And I think I'm going to say this here. I've not just said you in private, but I will say this here to get your authentic reaction, right? Right? A woman texted me, right? She wanted to get information about me. I don't know why. And so I don't know this person in question. So I asked, I was like, oh, hi, please. He texted me on WhatsApp. I was like, please, who is this? Right? And she was like, oh, you don't know me? I was like, no, I don't know you. Please, who is this? I'm someone that's very, very security conscious, right? I was like, yeah, because I don't know who you are. You just texted me on WhatsApp on my private line. Why would I, And so I was like, oh, please, I don't know who you are, right? And she's like, oh, you don't know me? I was like, no, I don't know you. She's like, and she's like writes a name, and she's like, I'm Mrs. So person, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So good evening. Yeah, I still don't know who you are. Please, who is this? Right? And she's like, oh, your mom kind of like gave me your number. I was like, oh, okay. So the rightful thing to do was to call my mom, right? So I called my mom on the phone. I was like, oh, did you give somebody my number? She's like, oh yeah, sorry, love. I was so busy. I forgot to tell you that somebody was going to reach out to you. I was like, it's fine. So I go back to WhatsApp, and this woman is already calling my number, like literally calling my number, right? So I didn't want to be rude because my mom had admitted, oh yeah, somebody was going to reach out to you, right? So I picked up this phone. The audacity, that's what I felt about. I was like, the audacity of you to call me without even asking me. Well, okay. So I picked up the phone, right? And I answered the call. And the first thing she said was, oh, how have you been? How is everything? I said, fine. I introduced myself. And she's like, if not for maturity, you were actually rude.
By asking,
What do you mean?
Did you explain what is it that made her say you were rude? Was it because you asked who she was and said you didn't know who she was, or like what was she expecting?
I don't understand. I was like, lady, I didn't know. I don't know who you are. You popped up on my private line, and I don't even know who you are, and I had to who you are, and then I get, oh, you're rude. How? What do you mean? You know what I mean? And I think it's that audacity. It just gets to show you that the older generation have this audacity where they feel like, oh, because you are a younger person, you're probably a firstborn daughter, because she already knew my position, my birth position, right? You're a firstborn daughter. You should take things. You should be polite, even in situations where you shouldn't be polite. And I think that it's really a crazy dynamic, right? Because that experience this didn't happen like last week. I was like, what? People have audacity.
I can imagine how that must have been. So how did the conversation go from you're rude, did she move forward to tell you what she wanted to tell you?
Babe, like I was, when you said somebody was flabbergasted, I was like, what? Because that the part that even got me. The part that got me was when she said, "If not for maturity." I was like, who the hell is immature? Yeah, because I don't.
Okay. She was the mature one. Somehow she told you are rude.
What do you mean?
I also don't understand people like. That's one thing I have a problem with. The way people reach out to people on WhatsApp, and instead of you to just go straight to the point and say, oh, I'm this person, I got your contact from so person, this is why I'm sending you a message. Like when I chat somebody that I need something from, I'm literally describing myself and telling you how I got my contact, how I got your contact. So I don't know. It's always odd to me when people just message me and drop hi and expect me to go and respond to the hi before especially when we've not had any previous interaction. I mean, go straight and tell me this is who you are. Not that you even now drop a name that I don't even know and expect me to.
And it's like zero courtesy for you. No courtesy at all. Like they just expect you to kind of sit there and take it, right? And it's crazy. And then the next thing I heard was that I was rude. Like, so you're literally rebelling me without even we just spent less than 5 minutes communicating, and you're already telling me I'm a rude person. It's crazy. And I just think it's part of the things we also experience, right? As firstborn daughters, right? Bring this back to our topic. It's part of the things we also experience, because we experience similar things, whether it's at your workplace, people are like, oh, you're too much, or oh, you're being too rude, when you're just being your normal self. You're just being who you are, right? And somebody will just come and be like, oh, you're rude, this is not how things are done. Or even the one that used to pepper me the most is when you're at like an extended family occasion, and then there's always this one auntie that will want to come and tell you that you're not good enough. Oh my gosh. It's really, really frustrating. But yeah, I think that, at the end of the day, not being influenced by any external pressure should be something we should work towards, on. And I think that it's something we should always have at the back of our minds at the end of the day. So yeah, that's just what I want to say. So anyway, we're moving to the last and final segment, which is romantic relationships. Because we touched on this earlier, I was like, I'm going to talk a lot about this particular one because, oh God, I have tales, right? So romantic relationships as a firstborn, right? What are expectations, like, when you are a firstborn daughter? What are the expectations people have of you, right? You can't afford to fail romantic. You can't even afford to fail in any aspect, right? But then romantically, it's like an added pressure, right? Because people are watching the quality of person you're with. People are watching the quality of romantic relationships you're entering, right? Even they're already watching your platonic relationships, not to talk about your romantic relationships, right? And it's a pressure on its own. But do you feel, now that you're married, did you feel that, like I know you said at some point that your parents didn't put that pressure on you, but did you feel it externally from other people, maybe in terms of society?
Did I feel any pressure? I don't think I did feel pressure to be married or to date any person or to, right? So for context, my younger sister got married before I did, like I think years before I did. So it's really, there was I wasn't feeling like, I just knew that I wasn't even ready. Like, and somebody had come and said, oh, come in. Okay, let me not say that if somebody had come. Obviously, there were people, but there weren't people that I was interested in, right? But then I just did not think I was ready at the time. And it didn't even matter. Like I said, my parents were very chill. They're very chill people. So they did not come to pressure me and say, what are you doing? And all of that. Yeah. So it didn't matter. It didn't even matter if anybody outside was saying anything, right? I don't even think, perhaps it was just one person that was trying to hint at something like that, but I just shut it off before it even went further. Because like I said, I wasn't ready for that. And I'm also a very private person. I wouldn't be dating somebody and everybody will know who I'm dating, right? So it just makes those very close to me would, but I'm not posting their pictures. I'm not showing them everywhere for you to come and start asking me what they do for a living or whatever it is, for you to come and start judging them by whatever lens you judge people's romantic partners by. But I don't think I felt any pressure to be married or to, or to date any particular kind of person because I'm a firstborn or whatever.
Okay, that's.
So what about you? What about you?
My dear, it first of all started in the university, but surprisingly it wasn't from my parents, right? Because like I also said, my parents, particularly my dad wasn't the kind of person. He was a very forward thinking person. He wasn't the kind of person, he would just do it when you're comfortable, you know what I mean? If you're comfortable, you like, the person likes you, the feeling is mutual, the respect, because respect is important, the respect is mutual, right? Everything aligns, right? And so for me, there wasn't pressure per se from my father or my mom in particular, right? Even when I was having relationships, right, there was not much pressure per se from my dad or my mom. Maybe sometimes from my mom, because like I said, she would be like, oh, like, because I think that's something I even want to talk about, because I wasn't even the kind of person that would that really dated a lot of people. I think I just had like 2 relationships, right, so far. And, it was always a worrisome thing for my mom in a way, because she was like, and that's the thing. I don't know how I am to people, right? It's like I have this kind of like an intimidating kind of aura. I don't know. I've had people walk up to me and tell me that. I don't even know where it comes from. But they'll be like, "Oh, I find it intimidating, so we can't really talk with you." I don't know why they say that, but I think that was also a factor. So whenever my mom would be like, "Oh, have you met somebody?" You know what I mean? She was always interested to want to, but there was no pressure in trying to like force me like to marry, right? But now this is where the catch comes from, because now the extended family, that is not their business. Because if my parents are not if my parents are not having a fit over marriage at that age, why are you inserting yourself into somebody else's business? You know what I mean? So, but them, I mean, extended family will be extended family. They will always insert themselves into your business, right? And so, a lot of them will be like, "Oh, when is Kosi getting married? Oh, has she found somebody?" I would have extended family members that would literally be like, "Let's recommend you." And at that time, I had not even figured out myself yet. I was still in 300 level final year. Some of them would be like, "I know somebody, he's a good person, let me introduce." And I'm just like, I'm just trying to pass biochemistry right now. I don't even understand what we're talking about. Like, their grades to meet up and pass, and this person is coming to introduce. I've not even finished taking care of myself as a person, and you're coming to, you know what I mean? There was that pressure, but most of it was coming from the extended family. But this is where I loved my dad, because I remember there was one time one of my mom's brothers was recommending that, "Oh, I should get married." My father listened to that in the first time, listened to it the second time, the third time he didn't say anything. The fourth time he picked up his phone and called him and said, "Never in your life tell my daughter." Don't you ever pray. My father said, "You have a daughter, don't you?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Oh yeah, pressure your own daughter. Please don't come close to my daughter. Don't ever, please." I'm so serious. Don't do that ever again. Whenever she's ready to get married, even if she's 35, she's 40, that's when she decides she wants marriage. Leave her alone. It's her choice. It's her decision. You don't get to tell somebody else when it's right for them to have a romantic relationship, or for them to, you know what I mean? It was, I think that a lot of this kind of audacity, because it is audacity no matter how much you look at it, it's audacity that your extended family member thinks that somehow you're suffering because you don't have somebody in your life. Like, how? Where did you get that kind of mindset from? Right? If I wanted somebody, I would tell you, "Oh, no, I'm open to looking for somebody," right? But not when I'm enjoying my life and trying to figure out myself, and then you're like, "Let me introduce you to somebody. Please get out of my sight." I don't know what you're talking about.
When you didn't ask them,
it's crazy, right? And I don't know how they are able to sit there with a straight face and figure these things out for themselves, and just know that they can insert themselves in your business with all audacity. It's crazy, honestly speaking. So yeah, my own experiences was a lot. And these ones are just the few I can even say open. There are some of them that are too to the core that I can't even say out here on this podcast. Honestly speaking, I can't say it out, because some of them would even go as far as even talking on that person on your behalf, and then they will be like, "Oh yes, I've figured out that this person is nice for you." How?
wow,
I don't understand. How?
I know that.
Oh my god.
That's funny. But I have a question around this dating thing, right? Before we get to the whole marriage and uni, like, would you say that, how did it affect, okay, when did you even start dating? And some people started dating when they were in secondary school, some people in primary school, right? And would you say that your upbringing or your position as a first daughter perhaps affected when you started dating or stuff?
100%. Because, okay, now let me tell you a short story about myself. The first relationship I had was in 100 level, right? And I met that person in church. Actually, I met him from the same church I was attending. I met him, I think that was in SS2 or thereabout. So we're kind of like church people. with the young people in church and stuff like that. But I didn't want to date because I already had a time frame. My WAEC was very important to me. My NECO was very important to me. And so I was like, no, I'm not doing this until I'm in the university, in a mature environment that I know is okay, right? Because they did not born me well to date in secondary school. I could not know. Right? So, so a lot of that as a firstborn really played out into that relationship as well, because, and that was my first relationship, 100 level, right? And I also realized that I was playing the role of a mini parent, and that's not really how relationship, right? And so it was also one of the things that also helped to destroy the relationship very quickly, because I don't even think we spent up to a year together, but it was something that really killed the relationship really quickly, because I was basically doing the role of a minimum, right? And you don't do that in a relationship. That is just the honest truth, right? So it kind of really killed up the vibe of the whole thing, right? And then my second relationship was actually years later. That was about 5 years ago. Yeah, 2022. I know it's a long time to stay without being in a relationship. So, but you can now see what I'm trying to tell you in terms of my mom being really worried over the years, because she was like, I don't understand what's going on.
I don't understand what's interested in men or what. What are you doing?
Well, yeah, it wasn't that I didn't have people that liked me in between. I did, but because I'm such a very focused person, I'm a very forward-thinking person, right? I didn't have time to prioritize them in my life, right? There was no balance, or rather, I didn't know how to balance it, if it makes sense, right? So it was always like, I let you in. How am I going to finish up the other projects at hand now? So I would reject them, right? And also because there was also a fear that, okay, I didn't really like them back, or I might not like them back the way they liked me. Maybe that was a reason why I stayed off from being in a relationship. There were people here and there, but it wasn't really something I felt was worth going into. Like, okay, let me use a typical example. There was somebody I met in final year. I would say he was obsessed with me. In fact, obsessed with me. But, I just told him, Oga, I have final year papers. I don't know what you're talking about. You can stay. Maybe when we finish final year, then I can think about it. And now, in hindsight, when I look at it, it kind of feels like maybe I was not really interested in him. When in actuality, I actually was interested in him. But because I fix my mind to a particular thing and I just do it. And at that moment in time, that is the only thing I am thinking about. Right? Yeah, I didn't know how to multitask, right? But now, as an adult that has gone through life, gone through things, I'm able to multitask. I'm able to say, okay, even though I have this thing, like this podcast, for instance, even though I have this thing in my life, I am still able to accommodate somebody, if it makes sense. So I think that's one area I am grateful for, right? That I have grown in. Yeah. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does actually. It does. And I quite understand, especially I can relate to the aspect of, being somebody who, when my mind is set on something, wanting to achieve that and not wanting any other thing to distract you. Right. I think I said something along these lines to my husband now. Like when he was, I think, when we just started dating, or was it when he was asking me out, and I was like, something about relationships, I considered them distractions. Then I think it was just immediately after uni, and he was like, okay, he gets my points, but he doesn't think that's a nice thing to say to somebody that likes you, that dating them is a distraction. Right. But I totally understand, and I can relate to seeing relationships where, okay, maybe my experience from secondary school was what colored my whole idea of relationships, right? Because, okay, in secondary school I didn't date, but then a lot of my classmates would not say the same, because there was this guy that it seemed like we were dating, I was enjoying girlfriend privileges to a large to an extent, chocolate on Valentine's Day, this one always buying me stuff. Officially, I never said I wanted to be your girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
Or I never accepted to, be his girlfriend. But there was a day that, the guy walks up to me and asks, when are you going to cook for me? I'm like, I don't understand. I'm not part of what I'm supposed to be Like, that part of what I'm supposed to be. I'm literally in junior secondary school. Like, coming to ask me, I'm like, I just said, oh, okay. This is what you want me to be doing. This is what you want me to say yes to. Where will I tell my mom I'm going to? Like, what will I tell her I'm doing? I'm telling her I'm going to a boy's house to go and cook.
Wow. Oh my
So it was so like, I just saw relationships as a lot of work, and I'm like, okay, no, I cannot even do this. Right? I cannot do that. And I think that was just why I eventually had the mindset. And then also growing up, used to go to church a lot. You had mentors, who would talk to you about boy-girl relationships and how you don't benefit from them and how you're very young to do that. So all of that just made me stay away from relationships. Even though there were lots of people, and also I think being the kind of person I am, I didn't really like people. Like, I could count the number of people I've ever liked in my life, liked, been attracted to romantically. Like, I can literally count on one finger. like there are not a lot.
Do you know sometimes
for me to say no and ignore you because I'm not interested in you in that way?
Honestly, when I was younger, I used to ask, because it wasn't even a thought to me. And I think I started asking myself that question around when I was doing service in Katsina, right? I was just sitting and be like, what is wrong with me? Honestly, like, why don't I like people? But I realized that the reason why it was like that was because of the fact that my brain, when you compartmentalize things, right? I hope I'm speaking this English correctly. When you compartmentalize, oh God, yes, really. But when you put things like that in your head, right? You have a tendency of kind of like focusing on that particular thing. Every other thing is secondary, right? And so I think because I did that a lot, right? Every other thing was secondary. So I did not, and then I it wasn't until like my service year that I started to ask myself that question. And I think that it was around that time, 2019 or thereabouts, because not long after that was when I had the relationship. I started the relationship that now ended in 2022, right? So I dated that person for 2 years or thereabout and met him in late 2020, right? When I came back home. That was when I met the person. I think so, because I did a lot of introspection into like why is this going on, and that's the thing, right? And I think this is the first time I would say it to anybody, because the only person I've ever admitted it to was myself, right? I think that one of the reasons why that relationship also crashed was that I was idolizing him, if it makes sense. There was no genuine, there was no real genuine attraction, if it makes sense, right? He was highly intelligent. He was very, very ambitious. But I just realized that was what I fell for instead of like him as a person, if it kind of makes sense, right? And I think that was also one of the reasons why he had his own issues, though, let's be real. But like, that was one of the major reasons why it tore down to that part. And so I also had, and like I said, it wasn't until my dad passed, right, that I was also able to restructure myself, look at love differently, look at things in general very, very differently, to really ascertain what it was I was doing. So now my idea of love is like direct, right? It's more of like, okay, I want to see this person for who this person is, not necessarily because this person has qualities or this person has, qualities are important, right? But not necessarily because this person is like highly intelligent and then I ignore the other parts of this person. So yeah, but I think that sometimes, and I think that now that I look back, one of the reasons why I decided to go with that person was also because of the kind of pressure I was getting, because there was one of my mom's relatives that kept pushing me. She was like, oh my God, you need to do this. And I was like, oh, I've already met somebody that I feel like he's highly, intellectual, the kind of person I like. Let's go for it. Let's just, I might as well just go for it. So yeah, that's the crux of the matter at the end of the day. So yeah. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I'm really, really grateful you brought out the time to record this with me. Yeah, I hope that people out there will be able to learn something from this, right? Even though I would actually call this the Ajebo version of the Firstborn. because it looks like we don't have any burden.
Yeah,
but,
well,
we, but we do. Because I know maybe people that are listening to this that are maybe from families that have experienced shaggy will be like, what are these two people talking about? Well, yeah, we've done
well, we've said our own experiences. We're not going to manufacture experiences now.
we're not. It's true. It's so true. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Thank you.
It was a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So we'll definitely carry our gist back again to WhatsApp. But that's where we'll do all our gist. Thank you. All right, yeah. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
To all the firstborn daughters listening, your worth is not tied to how much you can carry. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to win awards for yourself, whether big or small, not just for the family name. And most importantly, you are allowed to be more than a pillar. Thank you everyone for joining in today, especially the eldest daughters all around the world. Don't forget to be yourself today and always. I'm Coach Ekechiku, and this is All the Little Things. Join us next week on our last and final episode. Thank you.